VCR, everything. You sold it all. You couldn't pay your bills. You're in debt up to your eyeballs. You're not in credit. You're in debt. And you're in debt to the bankers who are pushing forward the electronic funds transfer system coupled with the Federal Reserve System that monetizes the federal deficit using the IRS to collect it. You know, when they do these old Asian Buddhist grandfatherly type mystic sages, they always try to tell you that everything's connected. It is. It is. Everything's connected. What they're doing in Iraq is connected to us here. What Halliburton does next is connected. You and I will pay, one way or the other. We will all pay. Now, if you don't give a shit, your children will pay. Your children's children will pay. Your brother, your sister will pay. Somebody's going to pay. If the only concept you've got in your head right now is, how can I beat the system? I'm just going to tell you, you can't. Unless you're willing to risk going to jail. Now, I'm not saying that that's not a good decision. I'm not saying become a robber or a thief or a drug dealer or a prostitute. I'm saying these are options. But you'll be outside of the law. That's why they have that word called outlaw. You'll be outside of the law. So you can beat the system until you get caught, if you've got the stomach for it. If you've got the stomach for it. I know most of you probably came here anticipating, or maybe not anticipating anything, but maybe thinking that I was going to go on and on about Kerry and Bush and the elections, but by now you must understand, compared to what I've just outlined in such a brief way, do you actually believe Kerry or Bush could or would change the system to benefit you? Why would they do that? Who the hell are you? Why would they do that? They don't care about you. They're not Americans. Do you understand what I'm saying? They're part of a corporate system that Samuel P. Huntington referred to as dead souls. Samuel P. Huntington is one of them. He's one of them. He's a professor, sociology, political science. He wrote The Clash of Civilizations, first the article in Foreign Affairs, then the book, and he's been writing ever since about that subject over and over again. He just wrote an article in the National Interest that's going to be part of his new book that's coming out. An excerpt was in National Interest. And in it, he referred to these new men, this new breed of corporate elite. But they weren't just corporate, it was governmental, high-tech, banking, this new elite. He said they're not white-collar workers, they're not blue-collar workers. They call themselves gold-collar workers. And all they do is get on the Concorde and fly throughout the world, make deals about oil, copper, silver, banking, IMF, World Bank, Exim Bank, controlling governments like Iraq's debt and future, owning the world. They run the world. He says there's about 20 million of them now. In 10 years, there's going to be 40 million. He calls them gold-collar workers. And he says when they leave America, because most of them right now are Americans, when they leave America and they go do their work, whether it's academic, research, analysis, business, war, when they come back to America, they have no relationship with the American soil. They have no relationship with Americans. They have no relationship who lives here in this country. They refer to themselves as global citizens. Huntington referred to them as dead souls, putting his career on the line by calling them what I would call them. They're dead men. They don't care about anything. They don't care about humanity. They don't care about life. They have no moral, traditional, no kind of value system except to take, greed, money, power, materialism, raw materialism. That's their God. Money, mammon, is the God. And they already have it. They own it. They control it. Anything they want to do, they will do. Anybody that gets in the way, they'll take them out. I heard the argument this morning on Crossfire, somebody made the argument that we had to take Saddam Hussein out, and the language was that he was an enemy of the United States. Now it's not that he was an imminent threat or a threat to the United States. Now they're saying he had to be taken out because he was an enemy of the United States. So is Fidel Castro. We've got a lot of people out there that hate America. Do you understand what they're saying? If you're an enemy of the United States, and then change your understanding of what it means by states. A nation state, a nation is a nation of people. Like the Native Americans up in Quinault, where I live, they have a system called the Nation of Quinault. The Quinault Nation is those people. And they have their own governing council that negotiates with the United States of government. Our United States, our governing system. The nation is the people. The state is the thing that governs the people. So when you talk about the United States, we're not talking about us. We're not talking about the United States. What they meant was when the United States was formed, it was the united group of 13, now 50 states. The states government. The word nation doesn't appear. We as a nation don't exist. The only thing that exists is the states. And now the states are GE, Microsoft, Intel, Halliburton, Chase Manhattan. Those are the new states, the new governing bodies. And if you think I'm kidding, go to the internet, look up books under corporate governance. Then go to those institutions that produce volumes on corporate governance, and you will see that they are in fact talking this way, privately, in their own books and journals, to themselves, amongst themselves, about the fact that the corporation is the new state. It will be the new governing body. It will decide who lives and who dies. It will decide who's president and senator. It will decide who's the governor. Do you actually believe Arnold Schwarzenegger is running the state of California? The minute he said he was going to run for office, who was standing next to him? The former Secretary of Labor, Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of State, Undersecretary of the Treasury for Monetary Affairs, the CEO of Boeing, and before that, Bechtel, George fucking Schultz. That's who's running the state of California. That's who wanted to see him put in the governor's mansion. Now, the boys behind Schultz is, of course, the Bush family. He's always been one of the Bush babies. Always. So what we've got is George Bush's family and the Bush clan running the state of California, but they needed a front man that was acceptable to the silliest people in the world, the Californians. Because you are the silliest people I know. But it gets worse. I overheard little old ladies at a Rite Aid drugstore while I was in line to get my high blood pressure medicine. I can understand why I might need that. I heard two little old ladies say these words. I certainly hope we can get an Arnold Schwarzenegger here in Washington State. Two little old ladies, this big, really gray hair. Eastern Star. My husband was a Shriner. Mine too. Do you understand that there's a theory in philosophy that says people this stupid don't have a right to be free? Now, it isn't said quite exactly like that. But if you've read sufficient philosophy, Schopenhauer, Montaigne, Friedrich Nietzsche, Immanuel Kant, if you've read a little bit of philosophy, it's threaded throughout philosophy, all the way back to Confucian philosophy. People as stupid as Americans have no longer a right to be free. I'm not saying they deserve to die. I'm not even saying they deserve to be enslaved. Philosophy just simply says, if you're that stupid, that's what happens to you. Now, really smart people get dead too, under dictatorships. I've quoted in some of my press releases and in one or two of my recent papers. I've quoted now all over my press releases when I'm talking about the Iraq War, when I talk about the upcoming draft, when I talk about the system of checks and balances that we no longer have. There's a Cuban journalist that was quoted in Foreign Affairs, and he said, I think, was a very brilliant thing, because he said it to a reporter who reported in Foreign Affairs his comments, and he was currently in jail. And he said, sometimes the only place a decent man can be is in prison. The only place a decent man can be is often in prison. Do you understand what I'm saying? Most of you don't. A decent man would choose not to live under this regime here in America, would choose not to live under this regime, participate in it, and not dissent, not speak out, not try to do something about it. A decent person would do something about it. Not just figure out a way to make money and then run away. He would try to figure out a way to do something. And if at some point, look, I hate this part when we get this far in here. I am not a hero or a fucking martyr. Okay? I carry a gun, I carry a knife. When I get my keys and I put them in my car, my keychain has a Kubaton on it. I'm not going to go easy, okay? I know that there's people out there like the Bush administration that have, in fact, years ago contacted my office through General George Keegan and told me to back off because they can push back. All I did was collect all my latest papers and books up, put them in a box, and send them straight to the fucking White House. You want me? Come on. They're doing it to people all the time. They did it to Bill Maher, who demonstrated zero backbone. Zero backbone. Because he wanted another show. Okay, they got him off politically incorrect. He just wanted another show. So he's gone under the entertainment critique of Bush. That's what Crossfire is. When they talk about Bush and Kerry, it's entertainment, it's jokes. The two that are debating are joking back and forth. I used to have a client I no longer have, and he used to come to all my lectures and roundtables, and he used to say, Craig, you ought to collect all those anecdotes and things you say because they're pretty funny. And you could go like on one of those Comedy Central stand-up things, you got like 30 minutes, a comedy routine, you'd make a ton of money because that's pretty fucking funny stuff. And I looked at him and I said, John, I suppose I could do that, but I don't really think any of this is fucking funny. I really don't. I don't understand why nobody will try to figure out a way to get on Bill O'Reilly and then bitch slap that son of a bitch. I really don't understand why. And I'm not lying. I got clients that'll back me up. I'll have them all raise their hands if you'd like so you can see them. They're all in this room. They raised the money for me. We put up thousands of dollars. I'm going to give you the specific numbers because it's a little embarrassing. But my client base put up a whole bunch of money to hire 2 different publicity agents that were known to Hollywood, the media, and the news industry. We bombarded them. Professional PR firms bombarded them for a year solid to get me on O'Reilly, Hannity, any of these shows. I wanted O'Reilly. And the deal was made with one client separate that no matter when the date was scheduled, it would be live. I wasn't going to do the show on a screen so he could hit the mute button and then talk over me while I'm going like this. It makes O'Reilly look like he's whooping ass. You know, the sheriff calls himself, I'm like the sheriff. I go in and I clean up towns. See, I want in the studio with him, dressed up in a nice suit and tie. I lose a little bit more weight, clean it up, maybe take the beard off, show up. I get some thick Coke bottle looking glasses. Just sit here like, look like a doofus. And then tell it exactly what I thought of it. And then when he came at me, I'd knock him on his ass. Somebody needs to big slap this man. Hannity needs to be taken on straight up, mano on mano. Because they're getting away with murder right now. They're beating the hell out of people and begging movie stars to come on their show so they can beat them up. Cher is out campaigning. Cher is out campaigning. Have you seen the stuff they're doing on O'Reilly where they're showing, the Kennedy niece, or, she's out campaigning for Kerry, and then they show Cher. The only clip they seem to have of Cher is her semi-nude dancing with a bunch of other people, right? Well, it's not their fault. It's not just taking a cheap shot at Cher. There is no other scene of Cher, not semi-nude, singing. She's not political. She's never been political. I know. I met her. I sat in her condo with Sean Penn, and we talked to her. The only comment she said, one comment in a 45-minute meeting with her, as we stressed the need to get money behind a movement to change the country before it was too late. All she could think of was to say this about George Bush Sr. Don't they know that sometimes just enough is enough? Money. Money. Here's a woman that owns 28 houses. And she's going to campaign for Kerry on the basis that George Bush Jr. doesn't know when enough is enough about money? But she has a right to speak. She has a right to speak. But you understand, they're allowing her to speak. She's becoming that spokesman because they will not allow on Sean Hannity's show or whatever that other guy's name is. What's the...
Alan Colmes.
I don't know who that one is either. See, I don't have TV, so I don't know. I learned these names by being at the hotel room. Bill O'Reilly really bothers me. And then there's another guy, Christopher something, I'm not sure. But they yell and scream at you. They don't allow you to speak. And as soon as you start to answer the question, they cut loose a diatribe. And I watched him just beat up two professors this morning. He was a physicist and a professor, and he was denouncing the war because he's also a Catholic and a Christian, and he thought that the war was unjust, and he was trying to make his just war argument. He has these little crooked glasses and bald head, and a little bitty guy like this. And as soon as he started speaking, well, I think the just war doctrine is what was pushed forward, and then O'Reilly would just blast him out of the water. And it looked like O'Reilly was the only intelligent person speaking, that these two other inarticulate doofuses couldn't swing it. They couldn't. Why do you think they pick them? Now see, I'm not lying to you. Every single one of you, when you go home, email and write Bill O'Reilly's ass and tell him you should put Craig Hulet on. I'm serious. We have two PR firms. Kathy does it all the time. That's all we do is bombard them. They know who I am. They know the name of the book. They all got a copy of the book free. Over 150 copies of The Hydra went to everybody at Fox, at BBC, all over the place. 2 went to O'Reilly. I sent him one, separate. But he won't. He can't. Because he knows what would happen. Because, let me point something out that Kathy pointed out for me this morning. There's another reason, only this reason, why Cher is saying anything political. She's retired. She's retired. So it can't hurt her career. That's the only reason she's speaking out. She's known about all of these kinds of issues for over a decade. I met with her in 1991. She got copies of all the tapes, interviews, books, papers that we published up to that date. But she's not going to say anything then. She had a career. In fact, that's what interrupted our meeting. She had rehearsal with her girlfriends. So see, in my opinion, we've already lost the battle. We've already lost the war, part of it. All that's left is for me to try to give you a clear grasp of the understanding of what the problem is. The problematic, the Noam Chomskyan essential problematic. You need to understand the essential problematic. Because otherwise you can't do shit. You don't understand what the problem is yet. When you do, you have to grow up. That's the next step. You have to grow up. You have to become a grown-up. And I'm going to have to say something here before I take a break. I'm sorry if some of this comes off a little rude, but I'm out of time. Not tonight. I'm out of time. I'm not getting old. I am old. I know how much time I got left. I ain't got 20 years to be doing this. I don't want to be doing this 20 years from now. Shit, I don't want to live to be 70. What a drag. Live to 70, be in a hospital with tubes up your nose and tubes coming out of you? On a welfare and a medical system as corrupt as ours is going to be by then? I just got out of the hospital. Man, I talked my way out of there fast. I couldn't stand the odor. The disinfectant, the bleach, and the urine standing around in different parts of the building. So, before I'll go back to one of those places long term, I'll take care of this thing. Now, I'm not going to be here for long. I don't have the time for this. I only have enough time left on planet Earth to give you what I believe is the correct view of what's happened to our country. Not a view on how to fix it. That's up to you. You have to fix it. You have to fix it in your own life, and you have to grow up about what's going on. Now, let me be very clear what I mean about grow up. One of the other things I saw this morning on TV was a young woman got shot by what they refer to as a non-lethal bullet in Boston. But here's my real question. That's bad enough that they created weapons that'll kill people that they call non-lethal bullets. I know all the technology. I'm a weapons expert and fan still to this day. I got a ton of weapons. That's what I was trained in. I know what they are. But that wasn't my problem. You know what my problem was? What's wrong with these people in Boston? Who gives a shit that the Boston Red Sox won? Who gives a flying fuck that some baseball team won? That you go out in the streets drunk, raise hell, and turn cars over? When did sports become so goddamn important that while all this was going on, the sports, Sex in the City, and all the rest of it's going on, these men have quietly taken your country away. It's gone while you were watching football, Friends, and Oprah. All you care about is your big dumb ass, your car, your shoes, your goddamn important shoes. That's it. That's what you care about. So guess what? And this is true. And it's always been true throughout history, and it's true today. You're not going to like it. But you in fact do, in the end, always get what you deserve. So don't blame me or come back to my next lecture or call my office when you get fired or when you retire and IT&T or Intel says what they're saying to everyone these days. $65, you're a fool. You're a fool if you think you can live on Social Security 15, 20 years from now and live on it. You can't. I just had a doctor inform me that the first ever gallbladder was removed in Bangladesh, India, and a doctor did it from New York. Machines did it. They call it telesurgery. Now, do you think for a minute George Shultz or George Bush is going to go under the knife through telesurgery? No. They already got the real doctors. Your future is going to get a whole lot more bleak than it is now. So you really need to, change some things and view it a little bit differently. And the best I can do is, do another one of these, but in this case, I'm going to go take a break. So Kathy can beg and plead and whimper and whine and complain that you're not buying enough books or papers or tapes because she's got to pay the bloody bills that we create while we do this. So I'm going to go take a break, and I'm going to come back, and if you're still here, which will be very surprising, then I'll take some questions. Thank you.
I don't want to single you out, but a woman just came up to me and asked me about someone that I played on my show, and I can't find her. Where are you? Here? There you go. It's Ben Harper is the guy that I played. Anything by Ben Harper. The guitars were still, the jury's still out. We're trying to figure out who it is. Okay, I just want to take a moment and invite you all to consider, if you're not, invite you to consider what it means to become a client of Craig's. You heard him mention it a little bit during his talk, and I'm not about to try to, in my words, tell you what it is, but if you have any interest at all, there's a round table tomorrow. Craig's clients meet in a few different cities throughout the U.S. Throughout the year, and Craig, as he said, consults them. If you have a business or private interest, the best person to do your questions, if you want to inquire about it, would be Kathy at the end. Kathy's in the back in the beige shawl. If you want to find out more about how to become a client of Craig's, I would highly tell you it's time and energy well spent. What do I want to say? I'll say this very briefly. I have all of Craig's books. And as a good intentioned guy that wants to be informed, I've actually sat and flipped through them. They're not an easy read. Years ago I caught flack. Remember when the Celestine prophecy was big? I don't want to offend anybody here, but I heard the big hype about the Celestine prophecy. You'd be out, and everywhere you'd see somebody with a copy of it, and they're talking about it, and I eventually picked one up. I made the big mistake of saying, not only did I not like it, but I said it on my program, and I actually got an email last week that was left over from how many years ago? 10 years ago. I remember when you said you didn't like the Celestine prophecy. What do you know about books? Well, I know what I appreciate and what I don't. I know what I like and what I don't. I know what's an important book to have in your possession and what's not. And if you haven't picked up the Hydra that Craig makes reference to, you need to have that in your house. You need to acquaint yourself with it and a lot of the information. So if you haven't picked it up, there's plenty in the back. And I'm not going to give you the push or the hard sell. It's an important book to have in your house. As Craig said, he's going to do some questions now. So if you do have questions, get ready because here comes Craig. Thank you.
Have any of you thought about why they're constantly repeating in the media right now that the insurgency is being funded through Syria with Saudi money? Do you believe a guerrilla war, an insurgency, needs to be funded by the Saudi Arabians? A nationalistic insurgency, a guerrilla war against our occupation needs to be funded by Saudi Arabia through Syria. No. No. And the argument I'm hearing also is that we're not going to have to stay there for the long period of time because the Iraqi military and police are being trained to take over. We trained the South Vietnamese army, called ARVNs. We trained them for 15 years before most of you had any idea we were even in Vietnam. We were actually in Vietnam in the late 50s. While the French were still there, we were there. We trained them forever. They never could defeat the North Vietnamese army, and they never stood a chance at defeating the Viet Cong. What they're not telling you that only a few analysts are getting out in public saying, in foreign affairs they've said it, in national interest they've said it, most military and defense analysts have said it, you just haven't heard it. Hackworth said it, and I said it before we went into Afghanistan. I also said this on the Jim Bohannon show. If we go into Afghanistan and Iraq, we will have to fight a guerrilla war forever until we lose. We'll lose the war in Iraq. If we stay and try to occupy it, train the Iraqi army, if we stay there for the purposes we have in mind, we're going to lose the war. No matter what they tell you, no matter how they phrase it, and this talk about Syria and Saudi Arabia is because, in my belief, my knowledge base, if you will, I think they're next. I don't think Bush ever intended to leave Iraq. We're building 14 major military bases surrounding Baghdad. We've completely encircled the country with military bases. When those bases are done, it's going to look like what we did in South Vietnam. Da Nang, Cam Ranh Bay were giant, huge. They were cities. We built cities with hooches, tents, buildings, medical facilities, sewers, plumbing. We built cities because we thought we were going to stay there forever and win. And we did not. And there were analysts then that said, we will not. No military has ever invaded a foreign country, fought a guerrilla war, and won. Never since the dawn of time. We will not win this war. They will win at some point. But our concern isn't whether they win or lose, whether we win or lose. Our concern should be and ought to be that we're going to try. That we're going to invade this country and we're going to try to defeat the insurgency for as long as it takes. I don't believe this was ever about Iraq alone. I think that was the beginning of the plan. I believe they had targeted, long before Saddam Hussein, the country called Iran. That's the country they'd like to go to war with. That's the country they would like to dominate and control. But now let you understand something. You need to understand this. There are certain people out there that I read their works consistently, and it doesn't matter who you read, they'll all come to the same conclusion. They're called demographers. They do demographics. They look at birth rates, death rates, child mortality rates. The people of Iran have a huge country, a large population. 2/3 of the Iranian people, 2/3, are under the age of 30. In 20 years, 2/3 of Americans are going to be over 50. When we were fighting in Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh would make this statement during the peace talks, no matter who it was. When it was Kissinger, it didn't matter. His people, and he would state through his emissaries, we're not ever going to stop. We don't have to. We're a young country. Every time you kill one of us, 10 more enlist. Every time you kill one of us, you incite further guerrilla activity. And we're a young country. And he said, we can do this forever. To America. Because we're not a young country. Our birth rate is less than 2 children per couple. The birth rate in Arab countries is twice that, 3 times that, or 4 times that, depending on the country. If Bush thinks he can go in and occupy the Middle East without all the Western European Union nations backing us, joining us, the man is either insane or they have a plan to create a permanent state of chaos for reasons we're never going to fully understand, including myself. Because it looks like madness. It looks insane. But that is what they're doing. They're creating a permanent state of chaos. I don't think Wolfowitz and Rumsfeld, and if you look at them and look at the press conferences or look at them when they testify, Wolfowitz, Rumsfeld, Cheney, They hold the Congress, the Senate, the American people, the press in contempt. When they speak to us, they're spitting bullets. That's what we used to call it in Vietnam. These men are spitting bullets at us. They look at us like we're idiots. They talk down to us. And Cheney has a certain snarl to his behavior that you should take note of. Wolfowitz has a look about him that says, all of you are stupid. I shouldn't even have to be here answering your damn questions. So these men have an agenda. It's very clear. And those of you that have gotten focused on the neoconservative agenda purely as their ideology, you're missing the point still. The neoconservative ideology is certainly the part of the foreign policy, and that's what stands out. But you're forgetting who these men represent. They don't represent you. They don't represent the American people. They don't represent humanity. If you learn nothing else from me, if I'm wrong ever about everything, I will not be wrong about this. These men represent the U.S. and foreign, Western-dominated, multinational corporate structure. This is an American-led corporate empire. That's who they're fighting for. That's what the fight is about. And that's why they want to level Iraq. When it's all flat, leveled, destroyed, then they can go back in and rebuild it to exactly their specifications. And who rebuild it? You might not know this. The same companies that rebuilt or thought they were going to rebuild Vietnam. Kellogg Brown and Root built Cam Ranh Bay before Halliburton bought Kellogg Brown and Root, and they merged as one company. Now it's Halliburton, Kellogg Brown and Root. When it was just Brown and Root out of Texas, who was the president? Johnson. If you don't investigate what we call the Texas Klan or the Texas Rangers, if you don't investigate Texas as part of our domestic political agenda, you're not going to understand what's going on. Every significant key player, including manipulators within the Congress and the Senate, some of them when they leave office, remain inside the political loop, are from Texas. The Bush family has made sure their people from Texas, their group, is in key positions in this government. And that's what we're going to have to deal with in the future. But this thing that we're dealing with, you know who the author is, anonymous? He's a CIA operative, active duty. He's written 2 books about Osama bin Laden, and Imperial Hubris is his newest book. Well, get the books and read them. I don't like some of his conclusions that we need to win the war on terrorism. I know we can't win the war on terrorism. He knows it. But he did say some things in some interviews that I think are important. I don't believe he's utterly correct, but he has raised a warning, mostly in the London Guardian and the Independent, the British and Irish radio shows. He said that Osama bin Laden wants and needs George Bush back in the White House. He's exactly what they need. They don't want Kerry to win because you're looking at it wrong. They're not afraid of us. Osama bin Laden isn't sitting in a cave afraid of us. He's not afraid of us. None of his people are afraid of us. They're not afraid of American military. In fact, you know how comical it's gotten? In some of the military journals, some of the troops have spoken out, and they've said, and this is interesting to me because it tells you something about the youth in a country like Iraq. We think they're stupid. They slip out of their homes while our troops are milling around after a gunfight. These kids will come out, 8, 9-year-olds will come out, and they will throw potatoes at the Marines. Potatoes. You want to know why? They think they're grenades. So the Marines run like hell. It's great fun for the kids. They're throwing potatoes at our Marines so they can watch them run like hell, like rabbits. And then when they interview these little kids, they flat out say, the Americans are cowards. They're even afraid of me because you threw a potato at them. The world is not afraid of George Bush, Wolfowitz, Cheney, or our army. I was in Vietnam. I fought the Viet Cong. I didn't face the Vietnamese, North Vietnamese army. But I can assure you, when they fight, they are not afraid of us because we're bigger, healthier, wealthier, or have superior firepower. The great equalizer is the war of the flea. That's what it's called, the war of the flea. Guerrilla warfare. They are our equal. And if you're reading something other than the New York Times, you will hear our military commanders admitting, our ground commanders, some of them majors and light bird colonels, are admitting in interviews, but only to Soldier of Fortune magazine, Defense Intelligence, newspapers, Jane's Journal. They're admitting we can't win this war. One major said this insurgency is the Iraqi people in those homes right there in Fallujah. And we cannot win such a war. Because every time we kill a mother and a child, the sister, brother, cousins, and uncles join the militias. They join the fight. They interviewed a 12-year-old kid holding up an AK-47. He said, I used to go to school. I used to play soccer. Now I do this. Have you ever faced the youth in a foreign country in a war? We fought Vietnamese, Viet Cong, that were only 12 or 13 years old. They weren't 25, 28, 33. Some of them were just kids. And they are fearless, you understand? They have no concept like you as you get older and you fall down and hurt your leg, break your leg, get in a car accident, get in a fight and get your ass whooped. You start learning that life is a lot more fragile. They don't know that. They have no concept of it. They're not afraid. When they did interview some of the ground commanders, don't listen to Ollie North. He is a liar. Oliver North is a liar. He's on O'Reilly all the time. He's got his own show now called War Story. I've never seen it, but I can imagine the content. It's a bunch of puffed up Marine Corps bullshit. I was in the military. I fought Marines more often than I fought the Viet Cong because they hated the 101st Airborne, and we hated them. We'd get sent to Da Nang to help the Marines out on something. We'd fight with them for 3 days and 3 nights and be told to leave Da Nang. We're going to lose this war because nobody's afraid of us. All this huff and puff and hero talk, all this bullshit coming out of Oliver North, what men we are, what heroes we are. They interview some trooper that comes home and he's lost his leg, and he says how proud he is to be an American. Look, I'm sorry he lost his leg. That doesn't mean he's not still fucking stupid, because he lost his leg for nothing. And all it does is tell me that he's too stupid to know it. I was only 18 when I got notified that I was registered for the draft and I was inducted. I wasn't stupid then. I knew I wouldn't be fighting for anyone or anything that had any relationship to truth or reality. I don't know why I knew it. And so I immediately grew a cluster of friends around me everywhere I went. Usually minorities. I won't lie to you. Usually minorities. One guy that wasn't, he was a welterweight professional fighter that fought 37 fights undefeated. I got real close to him. And all I cared about was survival. Not fighting for my country, not fighting for the unit, nothing. And all we did was sit around, bullshit, protest the war, raise hell, get drunk, and beat the shit out of Marines whenever we could get our hands on them. That's all we cared about. And all we wanted to do was survive and get home. We disobeyed orders, we confronted officers, we were hellraisers. That's all that's going on in Iraq right now. I can tell you that's what's going on. We've got 2,000 deserters already. We've got thousands of them trying to get into Canada or Mexico asking for asylum. They're protesting the war. They're saying this is a stupid war. We're fighting for oil. We're fighting for Halliburton. They've quit driving trucks for Halliburton. 20 of them are going to go to jail for it because they refuse to deploy their vehicles and protect Halliburton trucks. They're going to be court-martialed. But like I said, sometimes the only place a decent man can be is in jail. Now we're sitting here at home. We're not deployed. We're not dying. We're not fighting. During the Republican convention, a Knight Ridder newspaper correspondent interviewed young Republicans, men and women, under the age of 30. He asked them first, do you support the war? That was his first question to each one. Young Republicans at the convention, every one of them, to a man and a woman said, absolutely. We support the president, we support the war. He said, will you put on a uniform and join the Army? And they said, to a man and a woman, absolutely not. They had great answers. They had great answers. One of them, even a woman said that she wants her future to be a politician, and she wants to be a politician in the future. She was only 17. She said, I want to be a politician in the future, and I don't think going to Iraq would be the best way to achieve that. I said, she's already a politician. The other ones huffed and puffed and said, well, I'm thinking about going. It's a thought in the back of my head, but I'm going to wait till I graduate. He's not going to wait till he graduates. He's never going to join. The young Republicans love the fight as long as they're not in it, as long as someone else is dying. I'm going to tell you something else you may not have heard. 50% of all these new recruits into the volunteer army are green cards. They're from foreign countries. They come to America and they can't find work. They come from Ghana, Seychelles, Nigeria. I'm mentioning those because of what I said earlier about trying to avoid the draft. Brazil, Honduras, Mexico, Ukraine, Bulgaria. That's who makes up 50% of our all-volunteer army. That's why nobody really gives a shit in America if they die. You don't know most of them. Most of you don't know somebody in Iraq. Most of you don't know anybody in the military. Most of America doesn't know anybody in an infantry or a Marine unit. So why should we care if they go over there and die? They volunteered. You know why they volunteered? They couldn't find work here. They have to find work to feed their family. And when they can't find work, all that was left is joining the Army, joining the Marines. Now, they never thought this was going to happen, because they're not given any greater intelligence because they're from foreign countries than Americans. So they bought the lie and enlisted. Now they're being told 1.5 years before their duty is up, just before their duty is up, when they enlist for 3 or 4 or 6 years, as their tour of duty is ending, they're told they either re-enlist for 3 more years, or they're going to send them immediately to a unit that's going to be redeployed back to Iraq. And they're in Iraq right now. They're being told to re-enlist into the military, stay in the military for 3 more years, or when they are shipped home, they're going to be shipped home to particular units, they're going to be sent back to Iraq. So you don't have any rights in the military. You have no constitutional rights. When they ask a Pentagon official, the news did, they ask him, isn't that extortion? He went, extortion? No, that's called recruiting. There's no rules in the military. You can't get a lawyer. You can't get any help from the civilian population. You sign away your right to a constitutional trial. The military owns your ass. The only thing that can end what's going on in this country right now is what I'm doing, if it should work, the kind of thing I'm doing, if a lot of people were to do such a thing. Talk to people, get some people to listen, especially the 18 to 26-year-olds that are going to be called cannon fodder one day. If there should be such an enormous backlash from the populace that they can't make the draft work. Because the only thing that's going to end what's going on in our future is a clash between the American people and the American government. Not between us and Iraq, not between us and Nigeria. This isn't between us and Honduras or Iran. This is between us and the American regime. Do you want to know who your enemy is? He's in the White House. That's who your fundamental enemy is. He's going to tax you. He's going to jail you. He's going to draft you. And one of my older clients says, you'll work for free and die for nothing. That's the future. He's not wrong. Now, if you're too old to be drafted and you don't know anybody young and you just don't really give a damn, I'll remind you, somebody has to pay for this. They know who's going to pay for it in blood. Somebody has to pay for it in coin. And that means all of you. Every single one of you are going to be taxed until you bleed. When Bush says that Kerry is a tax and spend liberal, Bush has already created the single largest future deficit in galactic history. And a good chunk of it's not even in the budget. When he sends another $80 billion to Iraq for the military or for security needs, it's not even in the budget. They're leaving it off budget, so it's not listed in the budget. But it all has to be paid for. How are they going to pay it? When it's a deficit, they'll borrow money. When they borrow more money to pay for it, they have to raise your taxes while inflation goes up. And when inflation goes up, because they're monetizing the deficit, because they can't tax you exclusively, they have to monetize the debt periodically every year, every quarter. And as they're monetizing the debt, inflation goes up. The cost of goods go up. Food, cars, gasoline, everything goes up. Not because of the war, it's because of the White House spending money, the Congress spending more money. Now when interest rates start going up, everybody's going to blame the president. But the truth is, it doesn't matter who's in the White House. The spending's already happened. Kerry would have to go in and not only pull us out of Iraq, he would have to slash the budget, get rid of the Patriot Act, abolish Homeland Security, and force the Congress to repeal all the laws that they've passed in the last 3 years. He can't do it. We don't have a monarchy. We have a Congress that has done this. You're still missing the point then if you haven't got it. No president has such power. The corporate world owns the 535 congressmen and senators. These people are owned, including the ones you like so much. The ones you personally like so much, whoever he or she might be. You're wrong. If they're in office in America, they owe their seat in public office to the corporate structure that funded their campaign. And they will do as they're told. Your fight is with Washington. Capitol Hill, inside the Beltway, the House, the Senate, the bureaucracy, the IRS, that's your fight. And in my opinion, you've already lost it. But because I believe you've already lost it, does that stop me? Has it stopped Frank Sontag all these years that he's interviewed me? No, it hasn't stopped Frank nor I. And it won't stop me. Until I fall over dead from a stroke, I will be doing this. Because I don't believe in that animal instinct of flight. I like this fight. This is a good fight. This is a good fight. It's good that I was born at this time in history. Otherwise, I would have probably died in a very bitter and ugly fight, and I wouldn't have lasted until I'm this old. This is a good fight for me. So I'm going to stick around. And I've moved as far away from the metropolitan areas so that when the shit does hit the fan, I won't be in the middle of it. So I'll be here to come back again and again and again. And if I keep doing this long enough, I may actually pull it off and get on O'Reilly. All I have to do is be persistent. This test I used to give to all my clients, I gave it to Frank on the air. I did it at the last lecture. What's more important than truth?
Stamina.
Stamina. Doesn't matter what your truth is. I don't care if you think you know what's going on. I don't care if you've got a cause in mind. Your truth is not worth shit if you don't have stamina. I got a lot of stamina. I can do this forever. Until they put my ass in jail, and do you think that'll shut me up? Do you think that would shut me up, putting me in jail? Not if there's toilet paper to write on. So you got to decide if you want in the fight. You want to be part of the fight, because that's what it is. And if it hasn't caught up to you yet, you haven't lost your job, you haven't lost your income, you haven't lost a child, you haven't lost a husband, a son, a daughter, or sister. If it hasn't caught up to you yet, you haven't been fired, or your retirement hasn't been wiped out, and the corporation you believe in so much. You know how many young people I've heard say this? They're 30 years old, and they say, I'm going to work, at this company or that company, and their goal is retirement. And they're only 30 years old. I just go, why would you want to retire? I'm already old enough, I could have drawn retirement if I'd worked for General Electric and it still stood. I'm never going to retire. I don't want to retire. Why would you want to retire? Why do you, in this audience, that have thought about retiring, what do you want to do? Is sit on your big dumb ass and drive a Winnebago around? How boring can you possibly be? Go fishing for 20 years? I met a guy out in the Quinault region. He used to know somebody that lived in the house we live in presently, and he stopped by. He was 83 years old. He's been retired for 30 years. He was rounder than he was tall. And you could tell there were no lights on. There were no lights on. He was perfectly content to be a big, fat, stupid, dumb as a box of rocks, white boy American with not a lick of sense. He was perfectly happy. That's not retirement. That belongs in a mental institution. Retire. I don't understand the concept. Why? To what end is retirement? You know how insulting that is? Do you think George Bush Sr. is retired? Averill Harriman died at 96 years old on his plane coming back from Russia after making yet another deal for Siberian oil. Now, what are you thinking about retiring? Like I said when I left before the break, then you're going to get what you deserve. It's not going to be as easy as you think. Those who have already retired, you know, they call them the white middle-class gypsies in their Winnebagos. They were the lucky ones who slipped through the net of a progressive change in the climate of American business. They actually got to retire, but it is no more. It's not anymore. In 20 years, none of you will have a chance of it. There will be no such thing. And they can't pay for Social Security. It's not only bankrupt, it's a pyramid scheme. It's not bankrupt. It was never intended to be funded. Social Security was intended to be funded out of the present-day workers' salaries. You're paying for people that are retired that never put anything into it. Most people that go and retire at 50 will collect 5 times the amount that they put into it. Women retire that have never held a job in their life. They've never held a job, and they retire at 60 because their husband paid into it. And he's dead. He doesn't collect it, and he didn't pay in very much because he's dead. But she collects it. Who's paying for it? All of us that are working and paying taxes. We're paying for Social Security today. Well, demographically, it's unsustainable. America's getting older. When America reaches that point where 2/3 of our population are over the age of 65, only 1/3 of the population will be working to pay for their retirement. So they will abolish it. They will privatize it, or they will nationalize the private retirement industry. It's unsustainable. These are called, in sociology, in political science, and in geography, these are called paradigm shifts. Something is shifting here in our country, and we're in the middle of it. And you can't feel it because the tectonic plates are moving too slow. You can't feel it, but it's moving. Outsourcing hasn't even started. The youth that are illiterate in our school system, that they're not trying to improve because they don't have to. The unemployed and the unemployable, they'll find work in civil service or the Army. That's why I was talking about the draft before we ever got George Bush. I said, if we get George Bush Jr., I said it on Frank's show, if we get George Bush Jr. as president, he'll do, first of all, he'll start out looking for a war. Somewhere, anywhere, he has to find a war. The reason he has to find a war, this is before he was president, he has to find a war. I said, Frank, you've got to have a war because demographically this country is unsustainable as it is. The youth are ignorant, illiterate, and unemployed. And some of them are flat out unemployable. Up to the age of 35, they won't get off the damn skateboards. This is unsustainable. You're not going to change the fact that demographically America's getting older, and the rest of the world isn't. Some of the rest of the world are getting younger. Their nations are getting younger. So this is unsustainable. The only answer is the draft. It solves the problem of unemployment, not paying into the tax system. It solves the problem of deploying troops in foreign lands to achieve objectives. It solves a whole host of problems, including illiteracy, unemployment. Now they're employed. Unemployment's not up. In Los Angeles, unemployment will go down. We draft them, put them in the army. This is what regimes have done since the dawn of time. This isn't even an American thing. You're looking at it wrong. You're thinking you're too special because you're American. You're looking at it wrong. This country is just a regime like any other regime. And those of you who came here from Uzbekistan or Honduras or Iran, Nigeria, those of you that have come to this country thinking I'm coming to the land of the free and the home of the brave, you simply made a demographic error. You've come to the wrong country. I don't know where you could go that's better off, possibly Costa Rica. I don't know, but America is no longer that place of liberty and freedom. It's no longer a place where you can start your own business and make money and retire and live the good life and raise kids and send them to college. Those days are gone. We're living under an empire, a regime, and America is now just a cog in the wheel, like Honduras, Nigeria, Iraq, subject to the same rules and principles. Why do you think they're going ahead, even though there has been no terrorist attack since 9/11, why do you think they're going ahead, not with Patriot Act 2? There's going to be a Patriot Act 3. While you're still stamping your feet about Patriot Act 2, they're already preparing Patriot Act 3. They're just going to keep taking away your liberty, your rights, your freedom, taxing the hell out of you until one day you wake up and it'll be way too late. Way too late. There's another problem with Americans. We're the one country on earth that actually would start political action at the state level and try to get referendums on the ballot to see that America speaks only English. Think about this. Only in America would a group of people in a state like California try to put an English-only referendum together, where the only language spoken in the school system is English, where English is declared the language of America. I know a guy from Belgium who's he writes software. He's from Belgium. He speaks 9 languages. 9. Fluently. We're the only country where we think English is the only language of right and passage. And I'm going to guess a third or 2/3 of this audience speaks 2 languages at a minimum, 3 or 4. I can tell. I also know a secret. I know why 2/3 of my audience are made up, including 2/3 of the sales of my book. You know how I know this? Frank's already tried to explain it to you. We're not getting rich. If you order a book from me, who do you think mails the book to you? Who do you think puts the book in a bag and sticks the label on it and takes it to the post office? Me. It's just Kathy and I. That's it. I have no staff. I have no crew. I don't delivery vehicles. I have no secretary. So see, we know a secret. This is what I said on Frank's show. Is every day I do this, and I've been self-employed my whole life, like I said, but every day I've done this political thing, public, where I do something like this on a radio show, TV, and then do a lecture. I'm the one in the end that knows exactly who's bought my book. 2/3 of my entire book sales have been to Hispanics. Almost the entire 2/3 are male Hispanics. Of that number, half of them are young male Hispanics. Same with this audience. We know. Because we're the ones that take the names, and Kathy writes them down, credit card or off a check. There has to be a name to the ticket so we know who you are. Why is it that About 2/3 of my audience are Hispanics, Asians, blacks, foreign countries. Why is that? In other words, why ain't white bread America in this room?
Watching CNN.
Besides, you're still watching CNN. And, of course, sexualization. No, I'm going to tell you exactly what it is. See, I'll repeat this. I don't know people that well from Iran. I know a lot of Muslims. Some anti-Gaddafi Libyans have been my friends for almost 15 years. I used to do my security up in Seattle when I did lectures and stuff. They were really good at security. White America, that class of people that most people would think I'm part of, not only cannot, they will not relate to me. The women think I'm too much like their father. I'm a loudmouth male. They watch Oprah and Barbara Feinstein and, feminists. And the guys like sports. And I don't like big white tennis shoes. I think you're stupid if you sit in front of the tube and watch football every single ESPN game 24/7. That means you're insane. There's something wrong. You need hospital care. Nothing is more ill in this country than its fascination with variety, sex, and sports. We are not adults. Thank you. No, it's true. Nowhere else in the world are we obsessed with these tiny and insignificant things that should occupy the youth, the adolescent mind. But the adult mind, still occupied by these things, is a sick mind. It truly is. And you see, when I get on Frank's show or any other show, I have no intention of talking to them. I don't intend to be polite to them because I don't want them in my room tonight. Why? Why would I particularly package my message to be heard by exactly the crowd that's in this room? Because I'd be talking to a wall if the other ones came. And the one thing I don't have time to do is waste my goddamn time. I know that some of you that have come from foreign countries, I'm not stupid. I can see. I know who's in my audience. When you do this, you get to know your audience. All orators that have ever written on the subject, from Cicero to date, will tell you, when you do oration, you know your room. You can tell. You can tell when they laugh and when they don't. If they laugh when they shouldn't, you know you got a problem. Or when they laugh at something that's not funny, you go, why are they laughing? You know it in the back of your head if you're in the wrong room. The last decade, I've never been in the wrong room. I'm in the right room tonight. I want to talk to exactly the people that are here tonight, not somebody else. Not Democrats, not Republicans, and certainly not young, white Republicans that support the war but won't put on the uniform. You see, I don't have any use for cowards. None. I mind my own business, and I really don't care what people do or say, how they act or how they live. I don't care if you're gay, white, black, green, pink. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't. I don't have it in my head. I've heard it said in talk shows that everybody in the world is racist. That's not true. The people that have said these kinds of clichéical, demagogic bullshit lines is because they themselves are. That's why they make such a claim. I know it's true because I've been around non-racist minorities that don't have a problem that I look like what I look like or talk like what I talk like. So you can't tell me the whole world's racist. I know better. The whole world is not racist. But almost all of America, white America, is. They still think they're a majority. These are not the sharpest people in the world. They think they're a majority. They still refer to themselves as a majority. Bill O'Reilly thinks he's talking to the majority of America. He's wrong. And demographically, he's going to be really wrong. So you know what I'm counting on? It's going to seem flimsy to my client base because I've never said this. I'm counting on the minorities and the people that have like mind with minorities, even though they be white. They have like mind with minorities, so-called, because you understand there's no such thing. Saying somebody's a minority is like saying someone's an illegitimate child. There's no such thing as an illegitimate child. And there's no such thing as a minority. There's no such word. Only in countries as arrogant as we've become do we believe that people that are different are so different that we give them a name so we can understand that they're different. If anybody takes back America and reestablishes the founding of this country and how the intent of the Constitution was met, I got a flash for you. It's going to be the children of what we call in America minorities. It'll be the ones that come to this country looking for liberty and finding George Bush. Now they're stuck, and they'll stay. And they'll learn the Constitution, and they'll have children. That's the hope of America. That's the real hope of America. And the people that will join them, that come from the white Anglo-Saxon, WASP, whatever you want to call it, middle class of America, and the underclass that's white, when those people realize what's going on, it'll be the ones of like mind that join them. And then we'll have a genuine revolution. But I won't be alive to see it. I just hope they remember my name. You know, like somebody to stamp it on some of their heads. So now I'm going to take some questions. Please, while I say I believe in a free republic based on constitutional principles and a democracy, don't get on the soapbox because I own this room. Okay, I paid for it with all you guys' money, and nobody came here to hear you get on the soapbox and try to bitch slap me. That ain't going to happen, all right? Good day.
Muammar Gaddafi, Libya gave up that nuclear program. He's a buddy of Tony Blair and George Bush. What is that all about?
Muammar Gaddafi is a secular, pragmatic whore. And the anti-Gaddafi Muslims and Libyans, they go back every year. They slip back into the country every year and try to take his ass out. So he'll join sides with anybody to survive. He doesn't give a shit about Libya. He gives a shit about Muammar. And he's a murderous son of a bitch. And by the way, the anti-Gaddafi Libyans, the ones I'm talking about, I don't know if you have any history, but these are the same young men that were in college and industry, and they started the revolution in a shootout at the Libyan embassy in London. And they were shuttled from country to country because nobody knew what to do with them. These guys really knew how to start a war. And when the CIA backed them, and when they went back into Libya, the CIA sold them out, just like the Bay of Pigs. Half of them died in the desert. So these guys have been through it. These guys have been through it. And they're smart. They won't get caught. They all carry 3 passports, $10,000 cash. All of them had a Mercedes hidden somewhere, in a garage somewhere with different plates. They know how to disappear in a heartbeat. Americans, we don't even know how to get out of debt. Anybody else?
Political scientists know that 90% of the time, about 90% of the time in political campaigns, the campaign that spends the most, that candidate gets the most votes. I'm not going to say they win because that's not what they do. Can I just read the first sentence of the Sacramento Bee article to you and have you comment on it?
Sure.
This is from February 3rd, 2004, Sacramento Bee. In the brief but wild recall campaign that rewrote California history, major campaigns spent close to $88 million, nearly a third of it by Republican Arnold Schwarzenegger. Can you comment on that?
Well, of course you did. He got $22 million per movie, and George Schultz backed him. He was chosen for that reason. He's always been a Bush boy. George Bush Sr. used to campaign with Arnold. He made Arnold his health ambassador. He used him to campaign. It didn't surprise me at all. In fact, when Arnold first announced that he was going to run, all I heard from my immediate client base was, that's ridiculous. He's not going to win. I went, no, you're wrong. He's going to win. It's exactly what he's going to do. Californians will not only vote for him because he's a Hollywood movie star, he's going to get all the goddamn money because the man's standing next to him. I knew that the first time I saw the first picture on the internet of him announcing he was running. George Schultz was standing next to him. I knew that quick it's done. It's not about polling, it's not about elections, it's not even about votes. This is about money and power. And the only way Kerry could win is if some unbelievable incident took place that made George Bush so apparent who he really is to the ignorant masses that an extra 10 million people rose up and went to the polls because he scared the shit out of them. Then they'd get rid of him. They don't even see him right now. They don't even understand what he is. The American people are, I'll repeat, we're too stupid to be a democracy. We don't know enough about human nature. We don't know enough about history. We don't know enough about democracy. We don't know what a free republic is. We don't know anything about anything that matters. The things we know about are the things that don't matter. We know that Kerry is for abortion and Bush isn't. Who cares? It's just a non-issue in the face of what's going on. It's a non-issue. I'm not saying it's not important to women that they should have a right to an abortion. I'm going to put myself outside of it because I'm a man. It's none of my goddamn business. Let women decide it. And men like George Bush and Kerry shouldn't be in the debate. And don't ask me what my views are on it. It's not something I concern myself with. I have a limited amount of time. I'm finite in my reading habits. I don't read fiction, and I don't watch Friends. And I don't even know who have to. When I come to this hotel and I turn on the tube, if it's not CNN and it's not about politics and government and business, and they start saying so-and-so was interviewed on Jay Leno, and there's going to be a show, and these are going to be the three guests, I don't know who they're talking about. And when they show their faces, and they show them in clips of them, I don't know who they are. I flat out don't know who they are. I don't want to know. I don't want to know who plays center for the Knicks. I don't care if the Knicks don't exist. If the team had been bought and changed the name, I'd be wrong. I don't care. I don't care about football, baseball, basketball. I used to play it when I was a child. I'm not a child anymore. Question?
Hi, thank you, Frank. My question is how do you decide when you do your research analysis what you've addressed a lot of different books and some you liked, some you didn't. How do you choose what's credible to you? Is it just personal? I mean, I'm not to say that I haven't been listening to anything you've said. I'm trying to.
Well, it's, first of all, to ask that question, you've already told me something. You've never done research. That's what you told me. Now, it's not a bad thing. That's called, I haven't done research, now I'm going to start. That's a good thing. How you start is you start reading credible sources to begin with. Harvard books, Oxford, Yale, Princeton. Books by noted scholars like Samuel P. Huntington. When you look up national interest and national security affairs, go to the authors that have published the largest, thickest, most deadly volumes on earth that are the hardest to read, and dig in. The rest of the sources will be in the footnotes. One guy from, I almost said something wrong here. One guy from the intelligence community, when he read my book, The Hydra of Carnage, he came out with his partner to our house, and when we sat down to chat, he introduced me to his partner as Mr. Footnote, rolling his eyes around in his head. Read the footnotes. When you read a book, a nonfiction book about government, politics, national security, read the footnotes. There's very often more in the footnotes that's in the text. That's also where you jump and find your sources. In marketing, that's called step and repeat. Just keep going down the line. And then at some point, if you've read 3 books on the Federal Reserve System, when you come across the 4th book, you'll just go, well, that's a piece of shit, throw it away. Or you'll read it and say it's redundant. You already are sufficiently aware of it, and you'll go on to a different subject. But I don't think anything's more important right now than international relations and security issues. That's what's driving the White House. That's what's driving the Congress. That's what's going to drive the elections. Bush is scaring the hell out of the public. Like an attack is right around the corner every minute. And you'll learn. You'll find out. And if you want, you can email me and I'll give you some books to start on. But all you can do is find a place to start and dig in and start going. I don't know what your skill levels are, and you'll find out what interests you as you go. What interests you might not be what interests me, even in this area. Way back there.
Based on everything you said tonight, in practical terms, what does it mean to be a dissident?
A dissident
Yeah, in practical terms.
is what I'm doing. I've been named on the internet as the most dangerous guest in America. Thank you, Frank. Oh, look, research and analysis is a form of dissent. By doing research and analysis, it's a form of dissent. You're saying, I'm not going to listen to what Bush and Kerry and CNN's Wolf Blitzer tell me are the facts of the matter. I can find out myself and make a determination. That's a form of dissent. Look, I was the first person asked to respond on Jim Bohannon's show, the nationally syndicated show out of D.C. Jim Bohannon called September 20th at about 5 p.m. and told Kathy he wanted me on the air at 7 p.m. 5 minutes after George Bush was finished with his September 20th terrorism speech. I don't know what he thought I was going to say. I don't know what he thought I was going to say. But the first thing I said was, the assumption is going to be made that Iraq was behind 9/11, that there was nation-state involvement, and that if we went into Iraq, we would need 300,000 troops, it would turn into a guerrilla war, and we would lose. Jim Bohannon never interviewed me again. But it was live in Washington, D.C. Now, I knew that I likely would make an enemy of Jim Bohannon's people, Westwood One, by doing that. But if I qualified what I said on the show, then I would be a regular guest on Bill O'Reilly. I would be a liar. I had the opportunity to speak for an hour in D.C., live, to what Bush said. And I basically said, Bush is the problem. That he doesn't know it was Al-Qaeda. And they'll never prove that it was Al-Qaeda. They can never prove it was Al-Qaeda. You understand that? They're dead. The 19 hijackers are dead. Nobody can claim they know the 19 hijackers were Al-Qaeda. Anybody that tells you that there's evidence are full of shit. There's a difference between barroom evidence or CNN evidence and legal evidence, courtroom evidence. That doesn't exist. Anyone else? Rebecca?
Several websites, including factcheck.org, have stated there is no agreement, and this is in trying to debunk the myth of an upcoming draft. They said there is no agreement between the United States, Canada, and Mexico concerning the FBI going and seeking out people who dodged the draft. Can you clarify that issue?
Well, I'll have to send it to you in an email, but yeah, I can.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't bring down with me the people that did the research, but I can with an email, right?
I have two questions, but before that, I just wanted to say that it already did slip out of George Bush's tongue that the army that he wants to reshape will not be an all-volunteer army. He accidentally did say to a crowd that we will not have an all-volunteer army.
I did read that. He did accidentally slip and say that.
AFP reported on it. But my two questions were, the buzz date around the draft revolves around, June 2005. And you mentioned that if we get hit with a terrorist attack, the bill might get resurrected in November or December. If not, they're going to just wait until everybody gets sworn in. The new, session would come in. That,
The reason that June date was thrown around is because the original legislation set the Pentagon to report to the White House and Congress by March 31st. That's where that came from. So June would have been the earliest it could have actually implemented,
If there was no terrorist.
if there was no terrorist attack.
And my second question is,
I'm hoping there's not going to be a terrorist attack on Halloween. No, I'm serious. If I was a Muslim terrorist and America was the enemy, and you wanted to attack before the elections, what better time than restaurants, clubs, casinos, where all of these Americans go dressed up as cats and dogs and devils? I don't know, it just looks like a perfect target to me. I'd say they have a lot of Bennigans when they're partying on Halloween myself. Especially restaurants that are on harbors and seaports.
and
Think about it. I mean, who would they vote for, actually, if they did do it? I mean, would they vote about issues or, yo-yo? I'm not sure that see, democracy is better than monarchy and oligarchy, but it's hardly the best form of government. I mean, if the masses of America voted, the true masses got together and voted, we'd have Bruce Springsteen running against Tom Hanks. You know, Warren Beatty actually talked about running for president last time. You know why? It's because he made a movie as a senator. And he thought, well, I did the movie, I know what being a senator is like, so I can run for president. And he actually thinks this way. He actually thinks this way. And all I could say to Sean Penn when that was all that was going on back then was, well, then Morgan Freeman ought to be president, because he played a president. And I really like watching Morgan Freeman talk. I think he's pretty cool. So he'd make a good president because he played the president. This guy here.
I have a two-part question. What do you think the likely reaction will be to Iran's development of a nuclear weapon? And if they do get it, what do you
Who?
think? Iran.
Iran?
Yeah.
Well, I think Iran has been targeted way back in 1990. The reason we helped Saddam Hussein in its war with Iran is because the Saudis and the Kuwaitis, the al-Sabah family, were afraid of Iran, not Iraq. We made Iraq the war machine that it is as a buffer to keep Iran out of the Persian Gulf. That's why we left Saddam in power. Okay? George Bush Sr. didn't screw up. He did not finish the job like they've said. We left him in power, and I knew before the war, ground war even started, I said on radio shows that Saddam Hussein, A, is not a Hitler, and B, we will not go into Baghdad and take him out. I was called a liar coast to coast. That was back when I was popular in the media. I was called a liar coast to coast. But I was right, because it was never about Saddam Hussein. It was about the Ayatollahs. And it still is. I think they still are the target. If you got a copy of The Hydra of Carnage, look at the back of the book and look at the pipelines that are being developed, already developed and proposed. They're encircling Iran and cutting them out of the oil picture. There's a reason for that. That's not an accident. That was back in 1995. Somebody else. Here.
On a previous show with Frank, you said something to the effect.
Now you're scaring me now. It looks like a soapbox now.
You said something to the effect that Osama bin Laden's whereabouts may be known and that his capture could be a possibility prior to this election.
Yeah, if they actually did know where he was, if they captured Osama before the election, it would guarantee Bush's win. But the car that picked us up at the airport is a young man that owns a private limo service. He's from Uzbekistan. And him and I talk about this stuff on and off when we're down here. And I told him, and he concurred, I don't know why everybody thinks Osama bin Laden is in a cave. He can go anywhere he wants. The family is worth, put a round figure on it, what, $1 trillion? He can go anywhere he wants. He can look like anybody he wants to look like. He can do any damn thing he wants. Catch Osama bin Laden isn't about, sending in some gunships and Marines and digging them out of Tora Bora. That was always bullshit. This guy owns airlines. He owns his own planes. They own ships. They're the largest construction firm in the world. All they do is haul shit around all over the world. Trucks, tanks, planes, ships. He can go anywhere he wants. Oh, he needs a passport. No. I don't think, I don't believe Osama bin Laden is even the threat today that they claim he is. I don't believe he's a threat today. I think it's a complete exaggeration. But Americans, not you guys, but Americans need a face on their enemies. Fidel Castro, O.J. Simpson. You gotta have a face on them for Americans. White America gotta have a face to hate. And Osama bin Laden, Saddam Hussein, O.J. Simpson, and these are perfect faces for white America. They get a focus on that. Next question.
What is the government's incentive to keep us safe from another terrorist attack if they hold us in contempt anyways? And if there is another terrorist attack, it would be easier to take more of our liberties away. And it would be easier to institute the draft, which would further benefit this whole sanctions.
Well, see, they don't have to go to such a string. The one thing about the elite in our country, including Bush Jr., is they have an element of patience and an element of history that we're lacking. We look at it the way you just described it because we would short-circuit it if that's what we were planning. We try to short-circuit and get it done right now. They don't have to. They've always known there was going to be a terrorist attack on American soil. Kathy, could I get a glass of water up here, please?
Okay, sure.
You know those bums sitting back there hanging around. Those so-called clients. You know, that shit. Now, look. The Bush family is a dynasty. The Kerry clan are part of a dynasty. One was born into it, the other married into it. Nobody in the elite is in a hurry to get found out or do something so corrupt as to allow a terrorist attack. That's the stuff of conspiracy theories. They don't have to. They have a long-term look. George Bush has, how many kids has this son of a bitch got anyway? He's a senior. What is it, 6 sons? 12 grandsons? The Rockefellers had 4, 6, and 8 going back 3 generations. They're building a future. They're going to be around long after all of us are dead. There'll be a Bush in the White House. So, nobody has to contrive anything to achieve their objectives. They know we're going to get hit. Nothing can stop a genuine terrorist attack on American soil. Nothing. I don't care what they say about the 9/11 Commission. Nothing on earth could have stopped the 19 hijackers. If you'd done your homework, you would already know something. Not one of them broke the law. Not one of them did anything illegal. Not one of them had a record. They were all in country originally, legally. There's nothing in the world that could have stopped them from doing what they're doing. Nobody would have even seen it coming. And if you think all Muslims look the same, you're wrong. The largest Muslim population of any country is Indonesia. They're Asian, they're black, they're white, they're brown. They can look anywhere from Italians to Mediterraneans. And they're not all scary looking. If they want to hit us, they will, and they will succeed. The problem is we have nothing in the works to stop terrorism. Everything Bush is doing is creating more terrorism. That too, by the way, was in foreign affairs. 2 security analysts did a study of our national security report on terrorism that Bush and Powell touted as being accurate, that said they had reduced terrorism. 2 analysts took that thing apart, published it in Foreign Affairs, and made them retract the statement. The truth was, by the numbers, terrorism increased 40% globally and against Americans. Bush has created more terrorist acts. When will it hit America? I don't know. Like Anonymous said, they want Bush back in the White House. But you got to understand something. They have created a monolithic counterterrorism sector of our security apparatus. Everything's devoted to it. The FBI doesn't even look at mobsters, gangsters, Teamsters corruption. There's no cops on the street. ATF ain't looking for no illegal guns. Nobody's looking at the militia units or the Ku Klux Klan or anything else. The whole law enforcement system in America has been gutted. Even in little places like up around the Northwest where we live, burglary, rape, robbery, armed robbery is running rampant. Everybody's focused on terrorism. So for now, it's going to be very tough to hit a hard target. I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to. I had a feeling someone was going to bring this up. I only sent this to my client base. and I sent it to about 200 people in law enforcement. I wrote a paper, the subject was titled, Terrorist Attack on U.S. Soil is Eminent Importance High. I was sent a memo from law enforcement. It was from the Southern District of the Anti-Terrorism Advisory Council, and they said that within the next 6 weeks, this was dated the 13th, that within the next 6 weeks prior to the election, it was urgently requested that all law enforcement be aware of any situation that may be out of the ordinary, blah, blah, blah. I sent it to my guys that I've worked with over the years. They came back and said, yes, it's all true. It is accurate. Everything is being focused on counterterrorism. They are, in fact, expecting an attack. And what I wrote is, they're looking in the wrong place. And the guy I work with, used to work with, he wrote me back and praised me. I'm bragging now. He praised me. He's a head of intelligence in a federal agency. He praised me and said, I'm glad you're looking at it this way. Because what I said is they're looking in the wrong place. It's not going to be an airline into a high-rise. It's not going to be an airline hijacked at all. It'll be a FedEx plane. It'll be a commercial tanker truck carrying chemicals. And they're not going to hit a high-rise. They're going to hit a restaurant, or they're going to hit a dozen restaurants, like during Halloween, when Americans are all dressed up like silly clowns. You have to start thinking the way they think. Terrorism isn't like anything else. Terrorism and guerrilla warfare are two different things. We were not hit with terrorists on September 11th. We were not hit with terrorists. We were hit with guerrillas. They specifically targeted the World Trade Center, which is the epitome of the symbol of the American-led corporate empire that has invaded not just Muslim countries, the whole fucking world has been invaded with our corporate structure. Second, they went after the Pentagon. Third, likely the CIA or the Congress was the other target. These were military targets. This was guerrilla war taken to a higher level. That was international urban guerrilla war that only Che Guevara ever wrote about. He was the only one that ever addressed it, said that would have to be looked at down the road. After rural guerrilla warfare in agricultural countries. So if you start understanding the difference, if terrorists want to hit America, not guerrillas, they're going to hit restaurants, Disneyland.
Sporting events.
What's that?
Sporting events.
Sporting events, which you see now, I wouldn't have a real problem with that. Do you have any idea that if I ever screw up and do something stupid and get arrested, I'll not only be on the front page of the New York Times, they'll do a special on Bill O'Reilly. Because they can take one of these lectures and clip out anything they want. And I'd be finished. Anybody else?
In terms of the draft, and more specific, the skills draft, I read somewhere that in times of peace, they would be able to enact that to fill voids within the military. Can you maybe touch upon that?
Well, yeah, because that is what I said. I wrote a paper, it's on the crime and justice page on my website. I list 33 items why we will have a draft. And I put that forward long before I was addressing the draft about Iraq and the need for military personnel, grunts. There's a whole bunch of reasons during peacetime why governments reinstitute the draft. And job skills is one of them. And it's not just that they need job skills out here. In America, we got a huge amount of young people that are illiterate. You have no idea how bad it is. The longest Labor Department study put it at 70% of the adult population between 18 and 50 were illiterate. Half of them are fundamentally, functionally illiterate. They can't read a memo. They couldn't read this. They can't read street signs. So what do you do with these people? And where are they? They're hanging out, they're doing drugs, they're on skateboards, bicycling around those goddamn little bicycles. See those things? The ones that jump up and down, that thing. Mountain bikes, right? This is the youth. You understand, these are unemployables. In some countries, in third world countries, they would call them undesirables. Because they're a drain on the system. All they do is eat. They neither produce, pay taxes, they do nothing. Okay, now I run into them sometimes. That's why Kathy can't take me anymore. Okay? I can't go out. I can't go to a shopping mall. I can't. We've tried. We tried to go out to dinner, a movie. Those kids, and some of them are 40 years old. Okay, and those kids are loose on the street. We tried to do it here the last time we were here. At this hotel, we went over this shopping area, what do they call this, outlet thing? And there was 3 guys walking in front of us. They were about, I want to say 29, 32 years old, okay? Both of them were walking 3 of them walking in front of us, and we were walking back, and I started to say, I can't walk behind these people, okay? The guy had his pants were hanging off his ass. They were wearing camouflage jeans cut off, big ass shoes, and all of them had caps on crooked, and they were all walking, you know. And I'm walking behind them going, you know, somebody needs to whoop these guys' ass. That's what needs to happen. And I go, what do I need to do it for? They're going to get drafted. Hello, they're going to get drafted. You know what? That swagger ain't going to cut it. No matter how baggy your pants are, you're going to get your ass whooped. Those drill sergeants, they got a whole new wardrobe for you. Look, I'm not for the draft, but when you run up against America as America, the reality, you know, I understand it. As much as I deplore it, I understand it. What are they going to do with 20 million young people that are illiterate, arrogant, refuse to work, and have no respect for shit? But the most important part is they're illiterate. You can't do anything with it. So you can't start a civil works program to get them to go in and build a shopping mall or build an apartment complex, or they can't even short order cook. They can't read and write. What are you going to do with these people? The government knows what to do with them. You're right. Governments during peacetime they look at their government, and the only thing government thinks about is one thing. Government thinks about one thing. All governments, all the time, from Troy to Sparta today, one thing: their survival. And they will do anything it takes to survive. They will assassinate a senator, they will assassinate a president, they will go to war, they'll draft the youth during peace, they'll do whatever it takes. Homeland security is about securing the government against the homeland. Understand what I'm saying? It's to secure the government, protect the government against the homeland. Now I got a shock for you. I know a whole bunch of guys in law enforcement. Some of them were with ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. They're not happy about this either. They're not happy about any of this because they don't want to be the ones sent door to door. It won't be George Bush and his kids going door to door to collect those youth. What's going to happen to gangbangers? What are they going to do? Are they going to report for duty? Yes. One way or the other, yes. If you think the Bloods and the Crips are scary, you've never seen the 101st Airborne rolling in with gunships, with their fake faces painted, and kicking ass, and being told, go ahead, do it. There's a new language now in the military, which we didn't have when I was in the 101st Airborne, is they refer it now as to get some. And they will. If they draft them, they'll name them, they'll find them on the street. They'll pick them up. If they don't come peaceably, then they'll go in a body bag. Your country is this close to chaos, right here. This isn't a joke. I wouldn't say this publicly if I wasn't damn sure of what I'm doing here. Because I'm not trying to create panic. That's why I try to drive off the radio show, Frank's show. I try to drive the Christian fundamentalists, the Christian Republicans. I want to drive them off the show. I want them to hang up. I don't want them here. Because if they took this serious, they'd panic and fall over dead. They can't take this. This is called a reality check. I want exactly the audience I've got, because what's coming is grown-up stuff. This isn't bullshit. You're young enough, you're going to get drafted if it happens. The odds of you not getting drafted is exactly the same kind of odds of playing lotto. The draft will be a lottery. If they decide they need 1 million people, do the math. And if you've got the wrong skills, their skills, the right skills, medical, nursing, if you're a doctor, emergency medical, computers, languages. The guy that did surgery on me 3 weeks ago, he's from Pakistan. He has no green card, he has no visa, and he has no passport. He's worked here 14 years. He did his residency in the largest New York City hospital. He's an excellent surgeon. I just looked at Captain and I said, and he speaks 3 Arabic languages. He's perfect for the draft. He's not an American citizen. But if you're living here and working here, and you've got the wrong skills, the right skills, he could be drafted. The only reason I don't think he's going to get taken is because I got enough clout in Washington State. I can leverage some political power to keep him exactly where he is, because he's needed in the community. But if he were floating around in New York right now, he'd disappear. So would half the nurses that were at the hospital. Right here.
Once enacted, can a presidential executive order be rescinded? And I have a follow-up question.
Yes, but never has one been. Takes 3/4 of a vote of Congress. In fact, it could be rescinded before it's ever entered into the congressional record.
For a short period of time, right?
Right. But they can go back and do anything they want. Congress does have the power to overrule, but they never have.
What are your thoughts on FEMA, and have you heard anything about the CERT training that's going on now?
The what?
CERT training?
Spell it, I'm not counting.
It's crisis, emergency response.
Oh, the crisis emergency response teams?
Yes.
They've already been designated to be deployed in what they refer to as, in fact, email me and I'll send you an article I wrote on it that actually got published quite a bit on the internet. That's already been authorized that 10 major response teams, FEMA response teams, are targeted for major cities. They're already deployed in major cities, including LA, because of the elections. They're afraid that it's going to go chaos because of election fraud again, except the public, at least the public on the left, won't stand for it. They'll hit the streets.
What are your thoughts on FEMA?
FEMA? It should have been abolished 25 years ago along with the CIA. But you know, that's a woulda, coulda, ought to. I don't do woulda, coulda, ought to. What I think doesn't matter. It's an institution that will be and already is being abused. They changed the definition of FEMA. Federal Emergency Management has been changed. They're not an executive order, it was legislation. Dianne Feinstein helped author the legislation to make FEMA respond to not the Cold War, not nuclear attacks, but what they refer to as an all hazards doctrine. And when you look up the definition in the law for all hazards, it includes civil disobedience.
In fact, that's their primary agenda.
That is their agenda now.
Right.
Their biggest concern is to protect the infrastructure of America, corporations, the government, against us. In case we go bonkers on them.
Thank you.
Way back there.
Yes, sir. Is it true that the Treaty of Paris of 1812 made all Americans Roman citizens?
Say that again?
Is it true that the Treaty of Paris of 1812 made all Americans Roman citizens?
Roman citizens? I don't have a clue. Do we have any classical scholars in here? No, I haven't got a clue. Wait, just one back, one behind.
Okay. Hi, Greg. I'm a migrant of 2 years old. I'm proud of being American, but although I'm not yet documented, my question is that I'm really shocked with the announcement of the short of vaccine, flu vaccine. I can understand this to happen in my country, Sudan, but not here in America. I need your comment on that.
How could there be a shortage of vaccines in America? You know, I have a problem with, but see, this is I'm gonna have to do something here personal. I don't have a real strong position about the flu vaccine because I know some people who took the vaccine, I think it was 3 years ago, and they were sick for 6 months with the flu. So, you know, I don't take vaccines. The last time I ever was given a vaccine was just before I got on the plane to Vietnam, and I didn't have any choice. And I don't want no vaccines from the government. You know, I happen to look at things differently, but that's because I don't get sick. I don't get sick. I don't get the flu, I don't get colds. I got to get something like Giardia, you know, just to have a problem. So I don't get sick. So I won't take vaccines. I believe the human system has the ability to create a stronger immune system if you don't keep taking vaccines. if you don't keep being inoculated. But then, you know, I could probably die tomorrow. So. This is just a theory. Right here.
Do you know, or would you speculate on why our government is doing what seems to be a colossal waste of money in building these soccer stadiums all over the world?
America is building soccer stadiums all over the world?
Yes.
I didn't know that. Because then I don't follow soccer, so how would I know that? Are they really? America's building soccer stadiums all over the world?
Yes.
Well, I guess, you know, my initial reaction would be, I guess soccer is going to be really big in America. And so it's going to be really big all over the world, in America, in the Olympics, you know. That's one of the times I'm really glad I don't have a TV, is the Olympics.
Well, our government right now is funding construction of something like 70 soccer stadiums
Oh, why don't
right
you bother,
now.
all right, why don't you, like this woman asked you right here, why don't you bother do a little research
Well,
and
okay.
get back to me, who gets the contracts to build them?
That's a good question.
Hey, you got to learn to ask the right questions, you know what I'm saying? This guy right here, yeah, you had your hand up a minute ago.
Yeah.
I ignored you twice.
Yes. First of all, I just want to say I work for a large public library system, and yes, our children are seriously illiterate. They like checking out videos more than they do books. Secondly, who is doing what you're doing other than yourself? Who out there is out there?
12 years ago, Persian Gulf 1, I could have listed 25 people that we facetiously called each other colleagues. John Stockwell, Helen Caldecott, Noam Chomsky, both rights. They're on the right, they're on the left. There's a whole bunch of them. They all quit, basically. Noam Chomsky's a joke to me, but you know he's still out there writing books. But actually, people doing this kind of thing that would go on a show like Frank and then do a lecture, or what they used to refer to as public scholars. There used to be 20, 30 of them. Most of them quit. They just quit.
Why is that?
Nobody would come to the lectures. Nobody would read their books. See, I run a business. I made a business out of this. I have a client base. I consult. I'll take a contract as a security analyst for a company, a startup company. I do anything I possibly can. Well, not anything, but you know, I'll do a lot to earn a living to keep doing this. I don't make money doing this. We have to cover the costs of our producing that so we don't go into a hole, because I am absolutely opposed to debt. But you don't make money doing this. That's why there's nobody else doing this. Frank has said it. He's not lying. He knows me well, and he knows what we'll walk away with here after selling what we said. We don't make any money. You can't make any money doing this. If you were a Republican or a Democrat, I'd be fucking rich if I was either one. I would be loaded. I would be on Crossfire. I'm not lying here. I'd have to clean up my act and my mouth and stuff, but I'd be on Crossfire. That's where I could have been. That's where Rita Rich, the producer for Bohannon, said, you know, that's where we need to put you, is on those talking head shows on those Sunday mornings. And she never understood. She always thought I was a Democrat because I was opposing Bush. No. I opposed Clinton, Carter, Reagan, Bush Sr., all of them, because they're all liars. So, because I've cut it through the middle, and I'm neither one of the two parties, this is it. This is as large as my audience will ever get. It's 200, 300, 400 people.
You mentioned once if Bush gets reelected, he could seek a third term.
Yes. Legally, he could seek a third term. Are you all aware of that?
No.
If we get George Bush for a second term, he can legally seek a third term with an act of Congress. FDR did it. There's precedent. It's not illegal. And he is that ambitious. Anything else?
Also, you mentioned that Bush, how they...
And then, of course, there's always got to have Jeb Bush, you know. And you know what I'd like to see happen, to be honest with you? I'd like to see George Bush get reelected and then announce that Dick Cheney is his Secretary of State, and then make Jeb Bush his Vice President. That's what I'd like to see happen. Huh? Because then you'd finally get it. Huh? Then even the Democrats would get it. The system is corrupt. They'll do anything it takes to put this thing forward. We're not dealing with the American government anymore. We're dealing with an imperial prospect, an empire, an empiricism titled imperialism. All those words have historical context. If you're from foreign countries, you know what these words mean because you felt the boot on your neck. Americans don't know what it is. They don't recognize it. When I say imperialism, workers, they think, I'll say, well, he's a Marxist. I'm a Marxist. He's a crazy Marxist. No, no, no. Imperialism has a long history, even before Rome. And of course, every empire fails, but not until it self-destructs internally. So the people that say, oh yeah, the American empire, it'll fail. Yeah, it'll fail, and when it fails, we're all fucked. You know, that's not a prospect I want to see happen either. I don't hate this country. If I hated this country, my friend who picks us up at the airport from Uzbekistan, he sounds exactly like that John Belushi character when he says, I love this country. I love this country. America is a beautiful country. I love this country. I agree. What I mean and what I know he means is I love what it ought to be, what it could be, what it might have been. And for short moments in history, for some, it was. If America disappears off the planet as a free republic, the rest of the world is screwed too, you know. We're the only thing that could have saved Afghanistan from the Soviets. You understand? We backed Osama bin Laden. We trained Al-Qaeda. We trained the Mujahideen. Without America, the Soviets would have won in Afghanistan. But there is no America to help the Iraqi people. There's no country to help the Iraqi people. We're now doing what the old Soviet Union did, except there's no America to shine the light of freedom and help the insurgents. So I have to quit now because I'm being thrown out of this room. Okay, I'm going now.